Hello, everyone. Welcome to Amethyst Racing. I am Oliver McWilliams, and I'm joined by Alex Johnson and Zach Livingstone of Mercedes and Ferrari, and we are going to look through the first three rounds across all three tiers of Amethyst Racing. We hope to record this every week on Thursday, so we have the most up-to-date information heading into the next race, just so we aren't having our views a bit skewed by tickets that just haven't come out yet. So, guys, heading out of season 5, we saw Max Housley winning it in Tier 1, Rosu winning it in Tier 2, and Will Swan winning it in Tier 3 for the Drivers' Championships. A lot of big moves happened. Care to run us through them?
So Kevin Balaj obviously going from Williams to Mercedes to be my teammate. That was possibly one of the biggest moves of that into season. There were a couple of the moves like Piper to was it Aston Martin, who is
Yeah.
no longer with us. And more importantly, Casper's to Ferrari alongside Mr. I was so tempted to.
Makers.
Yes, Mr.
Shrinemakers.
Yeah.
Shrinemakers, yeah. I'd say those were the biggest and the most noticeable transfers, obviously, because they're all the title contenders. I didn't notice many other transfers. I don't know if you did.
That's fair enough. I think another big move was initially Martin Chappers stepping up from Tier 2 into Tier 1 to accompany his good friend, Lewis Piper, in that Aston Martin outfit. Showed some pretty promising pace. I'll not steal away from your segment, Alex, but he was. It was quite a big shock for someone like him to just randomly go into Tier 1 when he kind of had a pretty quiet season 5 in terms of just being a reserve driver for most of it. Another big move I can think of was Peel recently moving back to Aston.
Well, that is a good point. Yeah, I didn't about Peel.
Bento as well. He's doing really
Bento
well.
heading off to Williams is a very big move as well. He's been doing absolute wonders for that team. Heading down into Tier 2, one of the biggest moves obviously is Will Swan, your current Tier 3 champion, moving to McLaren. It was a pretty out of nowhere move, and he was initially accompanied by not Will Swan, Evan Potts, a good friend of his. Later for Potts to go off to Williams just before the first round of the season. Another massive move was Rosu leaving his championship-winning Aston Martin side to head off to Red Bull to seek a new challenge. It was one that was an absolutely massive shock. Certainly something we just didn't see coming at all. Other big moves was Alfred Monk hanging up his boots at Mercedes, heading off to Williams to try and join that ongoing reconstruction of that team after the departure of Alex Harris, who moved to Mercedes alongside Luke Matthews. The Alfa Romeo Constructors Champion pairing has stayed the same of Skalski and Ule. Rasmussen makes a return to Tier 2, stepping down from Tier 1 for Haas in what hopes to be a very lovely reunification between him and Patrick Kiziel. Rene Kopf steps into that other Red Bull seat with Manuel Binder taking a step aside for the rest of the season as a reserve driver. Elsom initially accompanying Oliver McWilliams staying over at Aston Martin, who has since left, unfortunately. Soybean, a very interesting move that no one really knew how to predict. He's turned out to be a pretty good signing so far. We'll get into that a little bit later. Marco Mangano as well, stepping down from Tier 1 to go into Tier 2 to try and lead his Ferrari side a little bit more accurately, and to maybe show a better example to his boys. And I think that just about rounds it out.
Yeah, on the topic of Chappers, actually, I heard you mention it was a bit of a lonely season in Tier 2. I mean, I think the reason he was stepped up from Tier 2 to Tier 1 is we saw his pace on multiple occasions, and especially in Belgium in Tier 1 in Season 5, fantastic race from him. and I think that really showed the directors that it was time for him to move up.
Absolutely, and I wasn't doubting that he was. I wasn't doubting he was tier 1 quality. I'd never do that to him. But yeah, just an outsider looking in who wouldn't be watching every race, taking notes. The more casual fan, it would come as quite a shock. A tier 2 reserve stepping up to tier 1. Anything from tier 3, Zach?
There was actually quite a few new transfers in tier 3. Actually, we had of course the big outfit Mercedes under the stewardship of Luke Martin. He signed the rookie Arian Puthran to partner him. Red Bull retained the same lineup as at the end of the last season. They kept Ice Cream and Sargent. They both scored points in the first 2 races. McLaren also retained the same lineup, and best won in Imola, obviously, and Vasilev just won in Portimao. Ferrari, 2 brand new drivers, myself and Ben Cassie. We're hopefully pushing for the title this season. Alpine also got 2 brand new drivers, Kingma and Umphy. They're also hoping to score more points than last season. Aston Martin as well. New lineup. Bates obviously retired, and so Palmer was also banned. So they brought in Simon Adolf from Alfa Romeo and Erling Heiker, who is a rookie, who scored points on debut in Bahrain actually. So pretty successful move there. Alpha Tauri have the same lineup as the end of season 5 with Hannestad and Magnussen. Alfa Romeo, Ducker, the TP has obviously decided to stay as tier 3 driver, but he signed Kosev from Ferrari. When Kosev's showing some really strong pace this season, so hopefully that's a good signing for them. And lastly, Williams, Jeff Pavic has moved over from team principal at Mercedes to I think it was vice team principal actually.
Yeah.
To become team principal at Williams, and he signed the rookie Harley Davidson, who got a P9 on his debut in Bahrain.
Absolutely lovely to hear. Over to you, Alex, to continue this.
Just before we delve into tier 1, I just want to introduce something that we're going to do every week, every Thursday, and hopefully we can have a bit of fun with it. And what it actually is a thing called Meme of the Week. Yes.
Ooh.
So the way this works, we'll get a couple of you, if you watch this part, we'll get a couple of you to send in some of your best memes. They have to be related to Amethyst, and we will select the best one of the bunch, and we will have that as Meme of the Week.
This week's Meme of the Week is brought to you by our host, Alex Fox-Johnson. It's a great video. We think it's very funny, and we hope you enjoy.
Do you want to go down below quickly, Alex?
Yeah, on the topic of Pavic, he's moved over to TP in Williams, but he hasn't really had the best start to the season other than Tier 1. Obviously, with Bento sitting in P4 in the standings, he's done a very, very good job and a good start to the season. But again, Pavic, Davidson, and just his Tier 2 drivers, they haven't been able to really keep up. Obviously, Monk getting that win in Imola with that amazing masterclass of a strategy, which
Well played, yeah, well played.
yeah, me and myself and Luke Martin obviously thought Drunky Monkey had returned, but it turns out he didn't, and I'd say that's only really the only noticeable performance from Williams this season.
Not Lucas Bento going from last to, what was it, 5th or 4th in Bahrain? No?
I mean, I kind of did that in Portugal, so...
Oh.
I mean...
And you don't rate that performance, no?
I rate it massively. It was.
I understand what you're saying as well. They're not really
Yeah.
tearing up the tarmac like they thought they would be, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, Bento is obviously a very skilled driver. We saw that in Portugal, challenging for the win with Caspers, obviously being victorious. But again, like you said, they're not really tearing up the track like everyone expected them to, and themselves especially expected them to. But with Bento, that performance in Bahrain, it was very good. but he had a lot of helping hands, especially with the track. It was very easy to overtake at Bahrain, and he just utilised that and his own skill really, and paid off in the end.
Yeah. So heading out of that intra-season sort of period, heading into this season, Alex, you want to talk to us a bit about Tier 1 so far?
Yeah, so starting off with Bahrain, obviously season opener, a lot of high stakes. I mean, a lot of people seem to think that the first race is where you win the title, and they take a lot of risks. And obviously, they're getting used to the league. They're getting used to back to driving after the season break, and you see some major moves there. You see some major overtakes, and you see a lot of controversy. In fact, and I think we really saw that in Bahrain. We saw a lot of pushing and shoving. We saw some amazing teamwork between myself and Balaj, my teammate, which obviously ended with us getting a 1-2, which I'm very, very happy about. And it really showed that Casper's in that Ferrari was on the pace, and he was ready to challenge for that title. But with Bento again, I'm not sure what his issue was, but he was out in Q1, which meant he started at the back of the grid. But making his way back up to P4, fantastic performance.
It didn't trouble him, did it?
It did not.
It
trouble
was
him
very
at all.
light work for him.
It was very hard work for him. But I think again he had his skill on his side. He had his experience on his side, and most of all, he had the track on his side. Bahrain is just built for overtaking, especially that turn one. It's very easy to make a send into there. Very easy to just slip past or the inside or even round the outside. But I think more than anything, it was Ferrari and Mercedes that it was going to be them for the rest of the season, and that showed in Bahrain. It set up the stage for the rest of the races.
Absolutely. Heading into Imola, anything on that?
Imola, I think it wasn't the most of confident tracks for everyone, really. I mean, some of the contenders in Bahrain for the win, they were just out the points. They were off the pace. Especially me and Casper's. We were battling for the lead in Bahrain, and we were battling for points in Imola. I mean, and effectively, the instance that caused us to be outside the points weren't really our faults in a way. But that's just the Imola circuit for you. A lot of incidents happen, and we saw the return of Tom Hawkins spinning, or as people know him, 3G. There was a massive incident which I myself got caught up in at turn one, which saw Mr. 3G get spun around, and which caused a bit of a pile up and took me out of contention for top 5. And we saw a lot of that. We saw some of that at the start of the race. We saw some of that throughout the race, and even in tier 2 and 3, which I know you guys are going to pick up on later. But I think overall it's just an easy track to have an instant at.
Absolutely, and as we'll eventually get to it, we'll see that there is no shortage of incidents further down the tiers. Anything on the most recent race over in Portimao, first sprint race of the season as well.
Yeah, the first sprint race, I believe it went well for a lot of people. Obviously, with Caspers and Ferrari having a dominating performance, Caspers was really on it that race. And I think so was Bento. He had a few muck-ups. He could have done a bit better. But overall, he utilised his skill massively. And to be on pace with Caspers like that, with virtually no practice, was fantastic from him. Obviously, the debut of Shrinemakers, I believe you pronounce.
I think it's Shrinemakers.
Is it Shrinemakers? My mistake.
I'm pretty sure.
Obviously, we saw the debut of him, a 1-2 for Ferrari in Portimao with him coming P2. And I think that was a good start for him. Obviously, ending up P5, I think it was in the race, which was not the best for him, but it was still all right, seeing as it was his debut. But Portimao sprint weekend, there was no shortage of incidents there. A lot of contact, a lot of spins, and a lot of people getting caught napping, which obviously didn't help them in the championship fight. Didn't help a lot of people in the championship fight, and the only people that really benefited from it and did well in Portimao was Caspers and Ferrari.
Yeah, you can't fault them for what they did. They were, showed a lot of promise in Bahrain, got very unlucky in Imola, but they seemed to come back with a bit of a vengeance in Portimao. Anything maybe to expect from them in Monaco on Friday? Tomorrow.
I've spoken to Caspers. He's not done much practice for Monaco, and he's not very confident at the track either. So I can vouch for him to say I'm not going to expect a dominating performance from him. Still a contention for the win, obviously, as he always is. I can't comment on his teammate Schreimakers. I haven't spoken to him. I haven't had contact with him, so I have no idea. Maybe it'll be another Ferrari-dominated weekend. Who knows?
Yeah, Ferrari seem to have had a very, very nice start to the season across all three tiers, eventually, as we'll get to. Picking it up in Tier 2, in the inaugural race of the season, we saw a very familiar face on the top step of the podium, that face being Patrick Kinsey, the Season 3 champion, winning the race by only 0.5 of a second to the Ferrari of Justin Huveniers coming in second, with his teammate and team principal coming home in third to pick up a double podium for Ferrari, a very much needed double podium after some would say a bit of a heartbreak in Tier 1 for the Scuderia, but eventually it showed that they're not here to play around just in Tier 1. They're ready to really fight at this across the board. We saw Will Swan in his Tier 2 debut pick up a very impressive 4th place, Skalski getting P5, Monk as well getting P6 after recovering from a spin in about a third of the way in the race. Harris as well, or as he was known then, Mr. Sanjay Pinala, picking up a very impressive P7 after spinning out and at one point being out of the points and just getting right back into there purely on pace alone. Followed by him was myself in P8 to pick up a pretty good recovery drive from, I think I started 15th or 16th, which just showed that a lot of folks just kind of inherit positions and it's not exactly a matter of making big moves at Bahrain. You just have to, realistically speaking, first race of the season, as long as you survive, you're pretty much guaranteed to do okay, unless you have a pretty howling day at the office. Followed by McWilliams was Matthias Rasmussen back in his Haas in 9th, followed by Rosu, the current champion, to round off the points in a pretty disappointing Red Bull debut after technical issues in qualifying. A big shock, I think, was Evan Potts, who seemed to be focused on trying to fight for the championship from round 1 in Season 6, ultimately DNFing due to a very massive incident in Turn 4 with many others, including Lurgistam. AlphaTauri didn't have a very good day at the office either, with a double DNF, obviously with Lurgistam as well as Alex Day, making his return to Tier 2 in not exactly an ideal fashion. Ude as well, another big casualty out of that Lurgistam incident at Turn 4. Really massive pile up, and probably the worst, I think it's safe to say, we see this season, but we all know that could change in a week's time. João Silva as well had a very impressive start off the season. He would have got, I believe, that 6th ahead of Alfred Monk, it would have been on track, but he got a 10-second time penalty after the race, if I'm not mistaken, which put him all the way down in 11th. Heading into Imola, we saw a new face on the top step of the podium, that being Alfred Monk, after what some people can only describe as an absolute masterclass of a strategy, going on to the inters very early as the rain came down awfully quick on that Italian circuit, which troubled a lot of drivers, as just on that first lap of rain, it was already easily intermediate conditions by the end of that lap, which saw, I'm pretty sure there's an onboard from Monk of him going through these cars, but about 5 or 6 spun out. I think it was that straight into that chicane at the end of sector 2. Just showed that that track was getting damp at a more than alarming rate, which saw Monk take the top step of the podium. Will Swan keeping up that consistency in P2, 6 seconds behind him, after he showed a fair bit of very promising pace, especially towards the end of the race. Potts making a good return to the podium, trying to get his championship fight up and running. Rossi as well making a good return to form in 4th. Mangano keeping up some good consistency in 5th. Soybean making his AlphaTauri debut, got on track and off track. Sorry, no, he got on track at 7th, but ultimately got a 3-second time penalty removed to give him 6th place, followed by Kvyat, Ule, Hugendorn, and Hoeveneers to round off the points. Neither Aston Martin making it into the points, as well as neither Mercedes, as well as Mercedes had a pretty tragic double DNF in the closing stages of the race when the track was very rapidly heading back to dry conditions. A lot of people taking very early gambits onto slick tyres. McWilliams as well having an early DNF after a very feisty lap 1 incident at turn 2 and 3. Elsom as well having a very difficult race as well as Rasmussen, who made a very ballsy strategy move to go onto those dries a little bit too early, which ultimately cost him just way too much time to really have been competitive, rounding him off in 16th. Heading into Portimao, in the sprint race at least, we saw Soybean win it by 3.1 seconds to Alex Harris to take the first sprint race win of the season. Hoeveneers running off that podium, followed by Skalski, Potts, a new arrival to Tier 2 in the form of Fattenberg in that McLaren, followed by his teammate and vice team principal Will Swan, Rosu, Mangano, and Elsom to round off the top 10 in the sprint race. And then in the feature race as well, we saw a very interesting fight throughout the entire length of the race between Soybean and Alex Harris, ultimately with it going in the favour of Soybean, rounding off that win by only 1.6 seconds after a very intense fight for the lead that had lasted nearly the entire race. Skalski rounding off that podium, finally getting Alfa Romeo back up the form that they were hoping for to continue from Season 5 when they won the Constructors' Championship. Potts, Swan, Rosu, Hoeveneers, Mangano, Fattenberg, and Hugendorn rounding off the points. Hugendorn getting Alpine's first points in Tier 2 of the season, if I'm not mistaken. No, he got points somewhere else. Hang on. I think it might have been Bahrain he got 9th. Yes, he did. No, Imola he got 9th, Hugendorn. Sorry. Hugendorn getting the first points in Imola. Followed up by another good performance in Portimao, getting him that 3rd point to his tally. Rasmussen as well, narrowly missing out on points in 11th. Binder in 12th, making a step up to replace Rene Kopf. Marquinhos, someone who you may have realised raced in Tier 1 for a little bit, but he's recently had some technical issues and has had to step down to Tier 2. Obviously, it hasn't been a great transition as he finished 13th, ahead of Kvyat, Matthews, Ule, McWilliams, and Alfred Monk. A lot of big names absent from that top half of the grid, as we saw only one DNF in the form of Andreas Elsom. It was a very chaotic race, a lot of intense action throughout, including a very big incident at the end of qualifying, which saw the Williams of Alfred Monk hit into, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Soybean, who I think it was right at the end of qualifying. At least no one was on a hot lap at the time, and Monk just went right into him. We're yet to see if there's a ticket made of that yet. None of us three being in the FIA. I'm pretty sure we could disclose that information if we wanted to anyway. But as of now, the championship looks a bit like this. Soybean and Will Swan are currently tied on points for first place on 42 points. Alfred Monk following behind in what is essentially second, but we'll call it third for simplicity's sakes, with 33 points, followed behind by the Mercedes of Alex Harris in fourth. Then it's Kvyat, Huveniers, Potts, Skalski, Mangano, and Rosu rounding off the top 10, with Kizil, Huveniers, and Potts all tied on 31 points, which is an absolutely minuscule gap in terms of this championship, showing just how competitive this Tier 2 grid is for this season. McWilliams in P11, followed by Simon Oulé in 12th. They're both tied on points going into Monaco. Hugendorn, Rasmussen behind as well. Fattenberg is on the spreadsheet 15th, but he actually, I think he should be 11th because it looks to be a little bit of an inaccuracy there. My apologies. McWilliams and Oulé tied on points for 12th, sorry. Then the remaining drivers of Matthews, Kopf, Van Loon, and Alex Day all yet to get points on this grid, unfortunately for them. The constructors is as follows. It is Williams, Ferrari, McLaren, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Haas, Mercedes, Red Bull, Aston Martin, and BWT Alpine. I don't know why I said this title sponsor for Alpine, but we move. Obviously, this Tier 2 grid has been very, very competitive. I've heard some folks in the grid say that it's been more competitive than the grid of Season 4, which saw some of the most intense racing I think I've ever seen in a more junior rank of a league. As well as a very interesting fight for the championship between Rasmussen and Rosu. Hopefully we get to see something similar in that sort of fashion this season in terms of the intensity of this championship battle, as well, you know, Potts and not Potts, sorry, Bean and Swan looking to be very up there. Harris as well, showing ungodly levels of pace at times, where in just short stints in Bahrain, he was able to claw himself up about 4 or 5 positions in about 10 laps. He was just absolutely rapid around there. And hopefully we get to see more of this sort of stuff throughout the season, because it'll be interesting on certain tracks just to see how exactly this pans out. Anyway, I'll stop waffling about Tier 2. I'll hand it down to Zach Livingstone to cover Tier 3.
Thank you, McWilliams. We'll start in Bahrain. Puthran, the rookie, had a very dominant, obviously qualifying. He qualified on pole. But it was very close between him and Best. Only 100th in it, I think. And I was right behind them, about 2/10 off the pace, but I was in third. And then Puthran, I think he originally fell behind at the start, but through the multitude of safety cars, he managed to claw his way back through, I think with a really good strategy call towards the end. Saw him on much fresher tyres than everyone else, and he just flew away from the field, taking P1 by over like almost 2 seconds, I think. In Bahrain, it was Puthran, myself, and Masic on the podium, followed by Kingma, who had a great first race. He qualified in P12, made his way all the way up to P4. Martin also had a great race. He pulled himself all the way up from 15th on the grid to finish P5. Ben Cassi from Ferrari qualified P11, finished P6. So lots of high climbers here. There were 6 DNFs. Ducker, Zerveld, Nilsson, Pavic, Untfi, and Hannestad. I think Ducker was having a great race as well at the beginning. He was up in P3 until he made contact with Pavic, I believe, and he had to end his race early, unfortunately. But he really showed pace, which was not something we see a lot from the Alfa Romeo of David Ducker. But I was very impressed with him, particularly early on. Moving on to Imola, Best qualified on pole. I was 1/10 off of him in qualifying, and Kosev qualified P3 in his Alfa Romeo. In the race, Best sort of flew away from everyone, really. He was untouchable until right near the end, where he had a slip up going through Tosa, and I caught up to him just a little bit. Finished about 2/10 behind him in the end. Zerveld got his first podium of the season. Good points for Haas. Spikey got P5 in that race. Oh no, he didn't. No, what am I talking about? Kingma came P5. Why did I say that? Another great race from Kingma as well. Ice Cream finished 6th. Cassie P7. Untfi scoring points in 8th. Hannestad as well in 9th, and Sargent rounding off the top 10. Puthran just finished outside the points, unfortunately. He has shown great pace, so I would not be surprised if it was him, myself, and Best all fighting for the title down the road. Portimao, we had let me look. Portimao qualifying. Oh yeah, okay. I took pole in Portimao by just under a tenth of a second. Best was right behind me, and then Vasilev, who we had not seen in the season up to this point, had a great qualifying. He got P3, Kosev in P4, and Kingma in P5, once again showing his pace. In the sprint, Best won. Best won. He moved up one position from his qualifying. Vasilev moved up one position as well, taking P2. Kosev took P3. Nilsson, the I think it's McLaren reserve, he was driving for Williams that race, came in P4 in the sprint race. Martin got P5. Myself got P6. Masic was P7. Ice Cream was P8. Hannestad was P9, and Ducker got P10 in the sprint. In the actual race, was incredibly wet. It did not go well for many people, obviously, other than the McLaren boys, who just flew away from everyone. They were unstoppable, especially Vasilev, who ended up 14 seconds ahead of his teammate Best in P2, which was one of the biggest gaps I've ever seen on a racing track. Nilsson, the reserve, taking P3, I think, in his first race. Not in Amethyst, but his first race this season, which is obviously a great way to make your debut. Kosev getting P4, which I believe is his highest finish this season, which was really impressive from him. Masic got P5, Kingma got P6, myself got P7, Cassie got P8, Ice Cream got P9, and Hannestad finished out the points in P10, which shapes the table up to be in the Drivers' Championship. Best is currently first on 51 points. Myself in second on 46 points. Vasilev with his maiden win, taking himself up to 30. What is it? 32 points in P3. Kingma, Mr. Consistent, on 31, just 1 point behind Vasilev. Masic in P5, and Martin and P6. In the constructors, McLaren have a very healthy lead at the moment. Just under 20 points separate McLaren and Ferrari at the top of the table, followed closely by Mercedes and Haas, with Alpine finishing the top 5 on 35 points. They've almost Alpine have almost scored as many points in 3 races as they had in all season last season. So hopefully Alpine are on the up now, and we will see a resurgence from them. But yeah, that's all I got to say about Tier 3. Back to you, McWilliams.
Cheers for that. That was very in depth. It's a very interesting assortment of divisions we have going into Season 6, and so far we've seen some really incredible racing, some already very iconic moments throughout the tiers. Any comments on the track that's next, the one we've all been dreading as drivers, Monaco? Alex, any words?
I'm very much so looking forward to it. I mean, it's a very prestigious track. A lot of people like it, and I think, really, as usual, qualifying is going to be the main event for all tiers. So definitely watch out for the quick drivers over 1 lap pace around Monaco, because, well, they're going to be quick.
Tier 2, I couldn't agree more with you. Certainly all the fast drivers would be absolutely incredible. Something we can't really write off is, certain drivers, I'm not going to name names because I think that would be bullying, not the most consistent, and I think consistency around a track like Monaco, where you're just desperately trying to stay away from the walls on either side, it would be very important that you just finish the race. I think it'll be, I'm not saying it will get down to that low of a level, but it could be like Tier 2 in Azerbaijan last season. I'm pretty sure that was certainly my first thought when I saw that on the calendar. Let's just hope the Christ it's not wet throughout any of that race, because that'll not be fun.
God, that'll be awful.
I also hope to God it is
racing.
not Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan for me last season was obviously not the best.
I think there was 6 Tier 3 finishers in Baku last season. So
No, there was 6 Tier 2. There was 6 Tier 2.
I can't remember how bad it was in Tier 3. I think it might have been like 9 or something, but we definitely had a majority of
Less than 10.
Yeah, which is if anything to go by in a particularly wide track as well. I imagine on Monaco it will be much worse.
No heroics in the Santa Fort boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But obviously, qualifying the main event dictates heavily how that race could pan out because of just how difficult it is to make moves around there. There being only one DRS zone through the pit straight in the turn one. But we could see a fair few moves in the hairpin, I reckon. A lot of people could get very impatient very quickly if they aren't seeing the results of what they need. And I think a completely different mindset is needed for this track. You don't need to think about pace necessarily. It's about your strategy, where and when you'll pit really, and where you'll come out in. Because if you pit into traffic, all of a sudden your race could be compromised because you're losing time on the people that you're racing on different strategies. So we could see a very different assortment of strategies. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a lot of people gravitating towards 2, maybe even 3 stops, depending on how many safety cars there'll be. I don't think it's a doubt that there will be at least one.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
think that a 3-stop is a stretch. And obviously,
but-
like you said, people are going to get impatient. There are only a couple overtaking opportunities. For example, Seafront, I believe it is, just coming out of the tunnel. And I'd say the other main one is actually Rasgas.
Ooh, the cheeky little Rascas dive bomb.
There's not many overtaking opportunities, so you have to make 2 cars fit into one, really, even though
Yeah.
that's not usually possible.
It will be a really good test to see, kind of filter out who the real dirty drivers are. We'll get a very obvious view on everyone's driving styles when it comes to racing. But unless you've lot of any further comments, I think I'll do this for this initial rendition. Thank you very much for watching, all of you lot. All of the links to this league shall be down in the description if you're interested in joining. And we'll see you lot next week after Monaco.